Good morning.
Good morning. How are y'all doing this morning?
My name is Julie,
I'm Brenda.
a mother-daughter duo who are seeking to encourage you to love your husband and your family as you walk along the way. If you are not a wife or mom, you are welcome here, and I hope that you can get some nuggets for yourself. This is the perspective we're speaking from because this is the life that we're living right now. We take walks in the morning while my kids are still sleeping because this is the time that I have to focus and
the sun is rising. It's just beautiful.
You might hear some cars in the background.
That's where we are.
That's where we are. Yeah. That's the area we're living in. So,
as we're walking.
All right. So today we are talking about education. This is our part 2 on education. If you have not watched part 1, you can go back and listen to that. And then today we're talking a little bit more, boots on the ground rather than the foundation. And if you have questions or comments or things that we don't address in part 1 or part 2, feel free to leave that in the comments, and I'm sure we can have a part 3, part 4, part 5. This is an ongoing conversation. I don't feel like we can just get it done in 1 or 2 episodes, so feel free to leave your thoughts, questions in the comments, or if you disagree with us, let us know why and give us sources, and we'll consider responding to that. So, all right, so where are we starting? We're starting with a definition of education.
Yeah, I think the one from the 1828 just gives us a wider perspective of education, definitely a more biblical one. The one that is more modern day is more focused on academics. So that's how we sometimes think of education. And this is from Noah Webster's 1828 dictionary, which was published at the height of when we reason biblically, but it was also the time that we were backsliding as a church, and the seeds to humanism were planted with Horace Mann. And so it really captured our language using scripture. And it's so helpful as we're trying to reform our culture presently, and we're looking at words and they've been redefined through Marxist strategies to go back and say, well, what is a more biblical definition of this word? Marriage is very instructive, government, covenant, and education. So this is the definition. And what this helped me do as a young mom homeschooling my 4 children is realize that the chores were just as important. The manners and habits were just as important. Yeah. And so instead of seeing them as a distraction, I could see those as teaching opportunities when y'all needed to be corrected.
Wow. That's so good, because it is easy to be like, oh, let's get to the school stuff.
Yes. Yeah. So this is the definition, and then we'll kind of expand on this. The bringing up as of a child, instruction, formation of manners. Education comprehends all that series of instruction and discipline, which is intended to enlighten the understanding, correct the temper, form the manners and habits of youth, and fit them for usefulness in their future station. And it goes on, but I think just to focus on this right now is good, because a lot of homeschooling, especially at first, is correcting them. And so if we can do that with a gentleness and a patience, and realize sometimes we're having to correct them because we haven't been intentional to plan and to train them, then it helps. It's a lot of changing of habits when we first start homeschooling. And so that is part of the education. That just helped me a lot.
You know what, this reminds me of the scripture. It's in 2 Timothy chapter 3, and we did a whole episode on reading the Bible, and in verse 16 it says, all scripture is God breathed and is useful for teaching, rebuking, correcting, and training in righteousness.
Yes.
So that the servant of God may be thoroughly equipped for every good work. Nailed it with that definition. And that's where you can see some of these definitions have that biblical basis to them. So that's why we appreciate that so much. But that's where you really do need to start then, is reading scripture with your children, having a high view of scripture, showing them that when we're correcting our temper and our manners and all that, we're trying to follow a biblical model, not that we're trying to look good for other people, that they would praise us or say, oh, look at your cute children. They're so obedient.
And make us look good, right?
Yes. Because sometimes in order to correct our children, we have to risk not looking good because we have to say, excuse me, I need to leave the table and deal with my child over here. Whereas otherwise it could be just like, don't do that. I promise I'll give you a lollipop after, and I'm not perfect here. Okay. So I'm not pointing in the air.
We all have that tendency. We all have that. But just being, holding up this as a standard for education really helps us get past all of that.
Yeah. And so we really do want to get to their heart and teach them why we choose to, have self-control with our temper, not have our temper tantrums, and that we're seeking to do this as adults, and we're seeking to teach them to do it as well, because we do it as unto the Lord, not as unto man. We're not, because if we're teaching them, oh, you want to look good in front of other people, so act right, then they're going to care more about what other people think than what God thinks. And when it comes down to it, they're just going to want to look good. And then we become these little virtue signalers.
Or Pharisees.
Or,
whitewashed tombs, I think Jesus called us.
So
help
we
us,
want to make
Lord.
sure that we're not only teaching them how, but why.
Yes.
Why do we choose to not always give in to what we want to do? Why do we choose self-control? Because we're seeking to worship God in everything that we do, because He's King and we are not.
That's so good. And so you have on here Trivium, which I think is a perfect time to talk about that, because that looks different with the different ages. So how would you start teaching, like, let's say even before school, like 0 to 4 or 5?
Yeah.
That self-government and starting to teach them. What does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, this is an age where they kind of absorb everything that you give them. I love doing songs with little kids. I feel like my kids learn so much when there's something sing-songy.
And they memorize really easy.
Yeah, they memorize really well when they're little, and they're just like, oh, this is so fun. And I memorize. I was just hearing somebody say that I don't know if they said most or a lot of the scripture that they know by heart that comes up to mind when they, like with me just now saying, oh, all scripture is God breathed and He's useful for what's that scripture, and Googling and be like, wow, that looks exactly like what we just read in the definition. A lot of that is because when you were little, or even if you're not little, you listened to these CDs. I think there's one called Seeds Family Worship. Seeds Family Worship has several CDs with topics. Like one is courage, I think one is praise, like that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And they have a bunch of different scripture songs, and they're not super annoying. Like there are some of these like scripture CD songs that they get kind of annoying, like grating on the mind.
Yeah.
But I like the Seeds Family Worship. I think it's, it's young enough that they think, oh, this is cute, but it's not like super annoying. Another one is called Slugs and Bugs, which is kind of funny.
Great.
And it has some like funny parts in it, but that is a lot of just like scripture memory. I remember, I think it's called Scripture Rock when I was a kid, which was a little like, it would be a little retro now with the music style. There's another one, I think it's called Scripture Lullabies. And I love that one because I literally, my kids have little CD players, and I'll buy like CDs for them. And one of them was Scripture Lullabies, and one of my kids would listen to it at night before they went to bed, and I would love that. Like, this is my favorite CD to listen to when you're trying to wind down and fall asleep.
Yeah.
So it has this really lovely lady's voice, and she's singing scripture.
Sweet.
But it's really nice. So I like, that's 3 I can think of off the top of my head, or 4.
Yeah, that's very helpful.
Yeah, but then there's songs for everything. We really like songs for, like, I have musical multiplication. that we listen to.
Dates and capitals.
Oh yeah,
right?
I mean, I just go on Pinterest
and then the science one. What's the science one that you're using right now?
For planets. There's the lyrical life science. We use that in our co-op, lyrical life science. It's not necessarily like Christian worldview overtly, but it's
teaches the language.
Yeah, it teaches like the vocabulary of science.
There you go.
To different songs that a lot of them, like little campfire songs, but they just change the lyrics, and they're so talented.
They're very good at it. Yeah, it's amazing.
So, and I haven't found anything that I objected to in the content. Like they're not adding, they're not putting in like scripture or like, any. It's not like they're talking about God or anything. But I haven't found anything that I disagree with in it, and it just teaches you a lot of vocabulary of different animal groups, different organ systems for human anatomy, different geology units, So that's been really fun and helpful to just memorize different facts and vocabulary around science. And then there's things like the history timeline by Classical Conversations that we really like for memorizing events through history with the dates, because sometimes it's hard to remember all the dates and what happened next and what happened first, So that's one that we like. And there's lots of different videos and songs that we have enjoyed over the years. Skip counting. There's one, it's like teachers something, and it's like all the different skip counting, and they did a really good job with skip counting by 3s, by 4s, by 8s. I still use it sometimes in my head. so
that's all the foundational stuff, and then the Trivium is literally grammar, which is roughly elementary, logic, which is roughly middle school, and then rhetoric, which is high school then. And some people don't really agree with this, but I think we could all agree that elementary, they're learning the basics of reading, writing, and arithmetic. They should be. And then in the middle school, they need to learn logic. They need to learn how to research. And so that's the main focus there. And then high school, they want to tell you what they know. And so to be able to teach them how to debate, stage debates,
essays.
And essays, yes, and oral presentations. I mean, it's just that stage. And so when I would teach, and I had 4 children, 2.5, 3 years apart, I couldn't do 7 different subjects for 4 children that are that far apart. I physically couldn't do it. So we'd always come together for the joy of the story in history. And I remember having such good conversations, and you guys would ask like amazing questions. And so that was really fun. But then when I gave the assignments, they would be on grade level for whatever progress level you were in English. And then in science, we would get together to just enjoy God's creation. And we'll talk about the 4-year loop in a minute, because that clarifies everything. And then do that on their level as they were building their notebooks. And then math and the actual learning, reading and learning.
Language arts.
Whether they were writing sentences, paragraphs, or writing essays, that would be on grade level. And so it just helped me redeem a lot of time to pull y'all together like that.
Yeah, so that's something that we use in our co-op. We do a 4-year loop. So we have history and we have science. And within those, we have geography as well, when we're talking about different things that happen in history. We're talking about, different animals that live in different countries. We're talking about our geography. And so we do, for science, we have earth science and then we have biology, and then we have chemistry and physics, and we loop through them. So each kid gets it 3 times.
Which
over
is
the
the 12
course of
years.
their 12 years.
Yeah, it's perfect.
So that's science. And then we have history, economics, and government.
Well, with the history, it starts with ancient history, and then you have more modern history, and you have the geography. And I teach ancient history using the Bible, which is just so fun. Where usually that's the main spine of that class. And then for the 3rd year, we teach American history, and then the 4th year is American government and economics. And then, like Julie said, with the science, we loop that 3 times. And so they're learning it as at a very basic level, and then a more in-depth learning how to research. And then a really strong foundation of being able to share it through good, solid essays, debates, and presentations. And we started doing that with our co-op, which was because you asked me to. I really didn't think that would work.
Oh,
We pulled together as families. We have each family sit at a table 1 day a week, and we go through the story of history, and we go through the hands-on fun. Julie's our fun person that to do experiments and different, hands-on aspects of science. And then the families continue on the lessons Tuesday through Thursday, and we're having a blast with that. I did that with my family for survival, but when Julie mentioned doing this as a co-op, I'm like, man, I just don't know if that's going to work.
Well, what I love about a 4-year loop is that you're not trying to teach 3 different sciences to 3 different kids.
Yes.
You don't know what they're actually learning. It's hard to, like, I love videos. We have a lady in our co-op who will share videos related to the lessons that we're doing in science. And so, like, I like some of these, kid shows that talk about different animals or something, like Wild Kratts or something like
yes.
that. They just have fun, and it's very educational
and colorful and amazing.
So so then we can fit those in, and we know over the course of the biology year we're going to be learning human anatomy, plants, and animals. And so anything, we find these coloring pages on Etsy, or we find, a video on Pinterest or an experiment idea. We know in the loop which week we're going to fit that in. So because there's a lot of people that like doing units, but it's all kind of sporadic. When you're just buying a random unit study, if you don't have a grid for where you're covering that over the course, of maybe one kid really remembers it because they were older, but one kid was really young, and you're like, well, we covered that, but the young kid doesn't remember because they were too young. So then you got to figure out how you're going to loop back around to make sure the younger kid gets that, So to me, I was like, okay, this seems like chaos. Let's have a structure to it. Where in geology, where that's an earth science year. So we're learning about all of our rocks that year. We're learning about, the water cycle. We're learning about different types of terrain and, all that stuff. Maybe we did astronomy that year too, like
in an organized way.
We have like a grid of where we're fitting all these random pieces of interesting things that we're finding all over the internet. As homeschool moms, we wind up being collectors of all kinds of stuff. And then you're like, I'll get to that eventually. And then it just sits in the pile, So this just gives it a grid for when we're going to do that thing. And then you can just
about how long you're going to spend.
Yes.
And maybe
because it's like a week on each
so
subject.
And you're going to come back in 4 years, but it keeps you moving. So you're not spending all year on what you love and neglecting
others. If that
others.
works for you and that's how you want to do it, that's fine. I just want to make sure my kids have a basic understanding of all the different topics, and you're never going to cover everything. So we're not trying to turn into little robot, Googles. But
it's a good guide. And that's what we're looking for, that balance between we don't want to be legalistic, but we don't want to give so much freedom that the new families are like, well, what do I do? Yeah, we don't want that. We want to put down some kind of rails where they have liberty, but we're definitely leading them in to put a good foundation in their children. And that's been very fun. And then what I get to teach for Foundation for American Christian Education is the subject guides. And that is definitely restoring that biblical heritage that we began to lose in the 1800s with Horace Mann and all the others since then, because we don't have that. And as far back as we can remember with our parents or grandparents or great grandparents, they didn't have it either. So it makes it a lot of fun. It just helps us fall in love with God higher, wider, deeper, while we're getting some really good lesson planning skills. And they start with the scripture in each subject and how to apply it in that specific subject. And then they have a timeline, who God's used to further the knowledge of the gospel. And then there's just like all kinds of actually, this is how you teach the different grades, K to 12, these different skills. And so I'm going to start that whole series again in 2026. First, I'm going to teach Renewing the Mind and going to do peers. That's going to be a blast. I'm going to go through Dan Smithwick's course. So that's laying a foundation of biblical reasoning. And so we do all of this in a cottage setting where we have the families in our church. And if anyone's interested in starting something like this in their church, let me know.
Yeah, and by cottage setting, we don't mean like a particular style of house. We just mean all the grades together. And then, like you said, they're all like each family can pick what math they want to use for their kids.
Yeah.
We're not telling them that they have to use a particular math or a particular language arts program. They can do
but
that
we help them.
Yeah.
It's just such a balance. Some people know exactly what they want, and some people come in and they're like, help me. I really don't even know where to start. Yeah. So.
Morning. Hi.
Good morning.
And so then I was thinking about language, and I feel like learning Spanish is helpful in our country because I think that's like the second most used language. So that's always helpful and beneficial to learn as much as you can. I feel like sometimes it's really hard unless you're speaking it on a regular basis with people to actually be fluent. But that's something that I learned when I was younger, a bit of Spanish. But then I have been looking into other languages for my kids that are all dead languages. And here's why, okay? So we have a lot of words in America where we live, that are scientific language or medical terminology or real estate or law terminology, and as well as like just regular words that we use. But a lot of these words are based on Latin or Greek language, and so that is something that I have interest in for the kids to be able to kind of pull apart different words and know, like mal meaning bad, or ill, illogical, or illegal meaning not, things like that, so that if they hear a word that they've never heard before, they can kind of pull it apart and be like, oh, well, malware. Mal means bad, so that must be bad for my computer, Yeah. And so they're not trying to memorize the meaning of every word. They can understand by breaking the word up into its parts and saying, okay, well, I know what this word means, so it must mean something bad, or dict, meaning to speak. So dictation, dictatorial, it's all about speaking, okay? I get that. So they can kind of pull apart these words, and it kind of prepares them to be able to hear words that they've never heard before, be able to break them apart and understand them based on just knowing those roots and prefixes and suffixes. And then Greek being more like when they put two parts together. And I'm not going to explain this quite right because we haven't gotten to that section of the book yet. but a lot of words that are like
compound words,
like geology, geo meaning ology, meaning the study of, you know. So those types of words, a lot of those are of the Greek origin. And so I want the kids to have this understanding of some of these just ways to break apart words and then understand what they mean. So that's something that I'm interested as far as Latin and Greek for that. And then also Greek and Hebrew for scripture study. I'm right now learning with Biblingo. I don't know if I have a referral link, but if I do, I'll put it in the description. If I can find one, because they teach the original Hebrew and Greek, which is not like if you go to Greece today or if you go to Israel, like I don't think it converts.
Okay.
Because I think there's like different types of Greek, and we're learning the biblical type of Greek, which is the
Aramaic.
Well, it's like the outdated version. I don't know if they call it like Koine Greek or something. So I don't think it like converts to modern times, but that's not the point for me. The point is specifically to be able to study scripture. But that's something I'm interested in. So that's kind of like not something that people talk about a whole lot. I mean, they might talk about Latin for like classical schools and stuff like that. We'll talk about Latin. And a lot of that is why, but I also, the Greek and the Hebrew, I think is beneficial. I think it's beneficial to be able to understand something at a higher level. So I just wanted to add that. That's something my family is interested in. It's not something we've really worked into our co-op very well. I've been trying to like figure out a way to kind of work that in. I've not been successful.
Seems like every year we add a little more.
Also, art is something we kind of did in the beginning. A little bit, but we haven't quite. I think we
haven't systemized that.
A better system. So it definitely has been a learning process and a building over the past 2.5 years or something.
Yeah, we started.
Time flies.
Yeah.
So that's what we're doing there. So those are a few of our thoughts on education for part 2. I know there's a lot more that we could go into. Maybe we could do one more on language arts specifically or math specifically, or maybe those two together or something in the future, because we didn't really talk about those as much. But let us know if you have any comments or specific questions.
Yeah, we'd love to hear from you, because we definitely want to meet the needs of the people that are listening. And we only know that if you let us know. But we thank you for joining us on our walk today.
Yeah.
God bless y'all.
We will talk to you later. Bye.
Bye-bye.